it really doesn't matter what you're experiencing or how you put it into words. Seeking support as early as possible and having that conversation when something just doesn't feel right. And it can be in here or it can be in here, you know.
You're listening to Parents You've Got This, the expert guide to parenthood. The complete guide to fertility, pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. This podcast is proudly supported by Mistela, a natural origin skincare for babies and children, recommended by healthcare professionals. Mistela by Parents' Side since 1950.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast. We're your hosts, Christy Hopler and Freya Owen. And today we're going to be talking all about perinatal anxiety and depression. I think this is something that hits so many of us as new parents. Becoming a parent is so huge and it really does hit you for six. And sometimes you don't see it coming. So it's so great to be able to talk about the topics that affect so many of us today. We are joined today by the CEO of PANDA, Juile Borninkhof, and we are really looking forward to picking her brain on the amazing services that PANDA provides and also about this topic itself. So Julie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start talking about what is perinatal depression and anxiety.
Yeah. So for everyone it's different, and it's very much the same as anxiety and depression that people would experience through all of their ages and stages. So we know for new parents and expecting parents, all of the things that they're going through can either bring on, the experience that they've had through their whole life, bring that mental health condition into their parenting experience, or they may get it for the first time ever. So depression for many people feels like that need to really kind of lock yourself away, withdraw, feeling really hopeless and helpless, not knowing how to pull yourself out of this experience of being really flattened and just not being able to motivate yourself to get the things done that you need to. Often for people it can be an experience of not being able to eat properly, not being able to sleep properly, which I know is a bit nonsensical when you're a new parent. And, withdrawing from all of the things that kind of make you you. We know for people who experience anxiety, it can be kind of the opposite side of the trajectory where you're feeling like you're wound up like a rubber band, really kind of trying to preempt the things that could go wrong, lots of racing thoughts, feeling really overwhelmed and feeling that in your body. So we know for many people they've got a churning tummy, they may feel like they need to wee constantly, lots of things going on in their body. So it's that sort of mind, body, going 100 miles an hour. And we know that it's really common.
Yeah, when we talk about it in the perinatal period, can you talk about how you as PANDA define that?
Of course. So it's a little bit different for some organisations, but PANDA bases it on sort of the national and international guidance. So for us, we talk about perinatal period as being the period in which somebody is pregnant, and it can be a mum, dad and non-birth partner, through to the first year of bub's life. But we do know that the perinatal experience can go well beyond that. And we also know that people can experience anxiety, depression and all of those other mental health conditions that we experience as human beings when they're planning a baby.
And so can you talk a little bit then about the baby blues and how this is different to having, postnatal anxiety and depression, or is that sort of class the same?
Yeah, look, the baby blues is far more common. We know that it is that experience that many mums have, and we do know that some dads experience it as well, but that many mums have following the birth of their baby, and it usually lasts about 2 weeks. And for most people, it is an experience of a change in mood. It feels like, you're dysregulated. It's when the hormones are kind of settling and changing. It's when milk has come in for many people. Usually it's a time-limited experience. But what we know about the difference of anxiety and depression is that it is ongoing for many people, and it may come on in that first period, or they may have been getting it during their pregnancy, but it's more extenuated and ongoing.
Yeah, and I know for myself, I was just crying all the time for no reason. I was so happy and everyone kept saying like, she's not happy, but I would just start crying and I'd be like, why am I crying? Or just talking about how much you love the little person, you start crying but I think too, like it's very hard to tell because you're so tired and sometimes you don't know, is it you're just really tired? You know how you sometimes get teary when you're tired? Yeah.
I know for me, the experience was the first time I'd ever felt that dysregulation. And whilst I didn't have my own experience of perinatal mental health, I know that I was really confronted by that feeling of the kind of ups and downs, being a very stable person during my life. So that kind of really disrupted my sense of self and how well I was able to cope with this period, which is what we hear from lots of callers, you know. Yeah. It's that kind of inability to feel normal, inability to connect with this new role, and that is that first time when they're kind of going, oh, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. And so, Julie, how common is it to struggle?
Yeah, look, we know, and that the evidence is, you know, ageing in terms of it. It's been around for a while, and we really do need better evidence in this country and internationally, especially since COVID. We know that 1 in 5 mums and 1 in 10 dads will experience perinatal anxiety and depression, but there's lots of mental health conditions and adjustment conditions that sit outside of that. So it's kind of important to think that this is quite normal for lots of people. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with having it. It's, you know, one of the many conditions we face.
And so what are some of the normal thoughts that parents may have when you think, okay, maybe they need to get some support?
Yeah. Look, firstly, I would say I don't know that there are any normal thoughts because we're all unique and wonderful. But I do know that from the callers we have to, you know, through to the helpline and those that I've supported clinically in my own career, the first thoughts that people have is this normal? What's wrong with me? And, you know, am I going to fail as a parent? And we still hear, you know, from people on the helpline that there is this innate fear of I'm not a good parent and I'm going to lose my baby when I talk about this. So this real disruption, you know, is felt by so many people during this time. And that's why it's really important that we let everyone know that it really doesn't matter what you're experiencing or how you put it into words. Seeking support as early as possible and having that conversation when something just doesn't feel right. And it can be in here or it can be in here, you know. It's that sense of self and you know yourselves best. You are experts. And even though you've got this new bundle of joy or carrying this new bub, you know, it's really overwhelming when you feel like you're not yourself and that you can't connect with those parts of yourselves that you used to be able to.
Yeah, and it can be really hard too, I think, because society puts so much pressure on new parents. And so by the time, you know, that you are becoming a parent, then you look at other people potentially on social media and think, oh, they've got it all together, when really they don't. And it's great to sort of see now, I'm sort of seeing more reels and more real people showing the highs and lows of parenthood. I think that really helps people realise, oh, actually, it's quite normal not to feel normal, if that makes sense.
In fact, it is normal not to be normal.
I think there's that, you know, there's this kind of corporate juxtaposition as well, isn't there, in that, you know, we know that this is a period in our life, in all of our ages and stages, where we're kind of the most captured by an industrial, you know, corporatisation of what you need to be a parent, what you need to bring your bub home, what you need to keep your family safe. So all of that's marketed with these smiley, happy families, you know, and normalised families. And so it's a really confronting period for people, especially in our culture, you know, where we do feel we have to have certain things and attain certain things before we can nest and all of that stuff. I think it's really important to remember that that's just packaging, you know, the reality of what you're going through is yours and yours alone. You can be a wonderful parent with all of those struggles still going on.
Yeah, and not to put that pressure on yourself to be perfect because there's no such thing. Oh, it's the stupidest thing, isn't it? And let alone of this thing that you're so responsible for. I think that's really hard.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, Julie, we've talked about how obviously mental health conditions can impact us all across different phases of our life. Are there particular risk factors for parents that are, you know, either planning a pregnancy or that are in the perinatal period that may make them more likely to suffer during this period, or not really?
Look, there are. So, you know, the fact, and we've already spoken about some of those pressures and stresses that we go through, those exacerbate your experience, you know. They're more likely to wear you down physically. You're less likely to look after yourself and, you know, feed your soul with food and water and exercise and all of those things. And we know that when we reduce the positive behaviours, some of those negative thought patterns and, you know, our psychological well-being slips. So we know that it's kind of a petri dish of, you know, time when bad things are going to happen, you know, for people if they don't look after themselves or don't have the capacity to because they're just not well. For many people, we know that if they have a history of mental vulnerability, and it can be, you know, depression and anxiety, or it could be of, you know, trauma throughout their life or significant life events or a familial history of mental health conditions, if they've had a past experience, so they may be on the second and third bub and may have had a previous experience of perinatal mental health conditions, but they may be likely to experience again. And we also know that for people who kind of set themselves up and have these really high expectations where they then feel like this sense of failure, they're more likely to, feel pressured, and they're more likely to have that kind of disruption with their identity as a new parent. And those stresses and strains can really wear you down. And that's when mental health conditions can take hold.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I really learned as a parent is to be forgiving to myself that I'm learning something new, my partner's learning something new, and this little baby doesn't know, and doesn't know what it should be doing according to a book or to anyone else's experience, and just, that if I didn't have a perfect day, well, tomorrow was a new day, and I think that was really helpful, becoming a parent. So, Julie, you run PANDA, which is the most incredible organisation. Can you tell us a little bit more about PANDA and the services that you provide?
Of course. So PANDA's been around more than 40 years. And the beautiful thing about our organisation is that it was founded on heart and soul. So it was founded by two women who came together as a result of their own experience of perinatal or postnatal depression at the time, so depression following the birth of their bub. And they got together to share the commonality of their experience, and then all of a sudden were connected with all of these other health professionals and mums and dads across, Victoria, who had the same experience, and no one was talking about this. So PANDA has grown slowly. Our first grant was a photocopier because we did a printed newsletter, which I still have, copies of. And we've just grown based on the needs of our community. So as a lived experience founded organisation, we've listened to the things that our community need. We don't pathologise. We don't, go after all sorts of opportunities to do stuff. We just know that delivering a national helpline to parents that allows them to talk and unpack safely their experience, in an accessible way, being able to connect those people up with services if PANDA's not the best support for them at that time, is sort of our fundamental safety net. And then we do really cool education and training that's freely available to health professionals and to community who want to know how to support a loved one. We have a huge array and range of health resources. So we have content translated into 40 languages, which is really important because there are so many beautiful communities in Australia that don't really have a language for mental health, let alone perinatal mental health. And then we also have a mental health checklist on our website, which is used by so many people. And that allows people to do a non-clinical self-screen that gives them a bit of a read, so you get a report at the end of how they're going and whether or not they'd benefit from seeking support. We know lots of people use that. We've also got Dot, the chatbot, who's now on our website and helps people navigate things like breathing exercises and resources. So lots and lots of things. And, we continue to get more funding. We've just been funded to head into the Northern Territory and deliver intensive care and counselling support. So we go where the needs are and we try to do as much as we can for the community.
We love that, Julie. We love how you listen and then create programs to deliver on what you're hearing. Yeah. Talking of what you're hearing, can you talk to us a little bit about the most common questions that you might get on your helpline? What is it that you find people call up most often about?
Quite often they're calling up about things that are external to themselves, so issues with their relationship, issues with sleep or settling their bub, issues in the relationship they have with their parents, perhaps, because we know as human beings it's a lot easier to talk about the things outside of yourself and the things going on the inside. And then through that gentle conversation that people have with, our counsellors, and the counsellors are both clinical and peer practitioners, they're able to unpack, and we often find that there really are, some big stresses and strains going on for people, or some significant experiences that they need help with. We know that quite often people are ringing to talk about the fact that, they're not getting sleep and they're just having this issue in finding this new role as a parent, and it feels foreign to them and they don't like that feeling, especially as, we're mums coming out of careers for many of us, or roles, where we feel functional. This is the first time in many people's lives where they're going, hang on, there's no KPIs here, no rules around this. So we know it can be a really discombobulating time for people, and just being able to unpack that. But many people call us and they just don't know where to begin, and that's okay.
And that's so interesting, as you say, where it is easier to talk about something else, like to have a different reason for the call. Yeah. And love the fact that, you know, the person on the other end is able to actually talk them through that part of it and then actually delve deeper into the real reason for the call and the things that are really going on. How does it work with things like repeat callers and things like that? What's sort of the system and process there?
Yeah, so the majority of the work that we do is an initial call, and we do brief intervention work. So our staff are really skilled at doing that introduction, being clear on what we provide, going to where the parent is or the person is, because sometimes it's a grandparent and sometimes it's a health professional, having that chat about what it is that they're experiencing, and then having a think about whether or not PANDA is able to provide longitudinal support because they're in a geographically remote region, or we need to be able to provide translated supports, or the individual just doesn't feel safe having this conversation with their existing healthcare team. So we will always prioritise people who miss out or fall through the gaps in the health system more broadly as a free service. And we will provide longitudinal care. So that will often look like saying to the individual, you know, let's book you in, or let's get you to call back when you need us, and people can ring back at any time. Sometimes we'll find that so in Queensland, Victoria and Northern Territory, we have the intensive care and counselling program, which is a step-up support where we're able to send people, you know, and provide them with ongoing care and care with their existing health team over many weeks. And that's for people with more intense experiences or a history of mental health conditions. We also support lots of mums and dads with suicidal ideation in that program, which is really important that we're getting onto that really quickly and supporting people through that. But yeah, we generally, you know, unpack what it is that somebody's going through, offer them our supports or others. Like, we love working in partnerships. So we're often referring to, you know, dad's groups or mum mood booster, or, you know, all of the other services on the ground, or Gidget houses, or any of those supports that are there. And, you know, we can't do this work alone. So having those really valued services are so important. Or we're directing people to resources, because sometimes it's just that, yeah, what you're going through is normal. Let me give you some, you know, examples of other people's stories on our website, or let's connect you up with a pamphlet so you can show your partner and have that conversation in a way that's a bit easier.
So do you think that's the first step that someone should take? So if they're feeling like they may have something that's not quite right, what do you suggest parents do?
Put yourself first and reach out. You know, if we kind of had our magic wand on the helpline, and we talk about this all the time, if there was one thing we could do, it would be to say to parents, put yourself first. You know, you kind of can't give from an empty basket. You need to look after yourself first, even though you've got this bundle of love and joy. So put yourself first, seek support as quickly as possible, because we know that while we've got people feeling a little bit more functional and engaged, less withdrawn from those things that we said earlier they want to be doing, we can get them on track quicker. We can get them to supports quicker. We can get them having conversations with other people quicker. So really reaching out and trusting your gut, even though this is a time when absolutely everything feels foreign, you know, and kind of out of control. Do trust that flag. You know, we as women, we as men have these amazing flags in our bodies and our minds. And if something just doesn't feel right, you know, put yourself first. And it's, you know, the cost of a call essentially to seek support from the service like PANDAs, or to read some resources. So I think it would be, you know, the first thing we would love is that people just put themselves first and don't feel that there's a barrier to connecting with care or having a conversation with their GP or child health nurse.
And Julie, what would your suggestions be for friends or partners who might be worried about a loved one?
Have a conversation.
Sometimes that can be really hard to do, a hard conversation to start.
Absolutely. And I think it's made harder because as human beings, we want to fix everything. Yeah. So I think if you kind of take the need to fix somebody's issue or the vulnerability you see in somebody, it kind of eases it a little bit. So, you know, I would always recommend people just be able to have the conversation of either, you know, hey, how are you going? I hear this can be a really overwhelming time for people. Like, it's as simple as that. You don't have to have a fix. If somebody says, yeah, I'm actually not going so well, let's have a look at a resource like PANDAs, or let's have a chat to your GP, or let's have a chat to your family. You don't have to be fixing it. You don't have to be solutioning. Other people, find it helpful when somebody just holds a gentle mirror up and say, it looks like things are a little bit hard at the moment. How are you going? Can I help with anything? The reality is you're not going to break people by having the conversation, but the impact of not having that conversation, means that people will go on feeling they're suffering alone. And we know that so many people on the helpline say, it was because somebody said to me I looked like I wasn't, doing okay, that reinforced that feeling I was having that made me put myself first. So, not feeling you have to fix it, not feeling like you're going to break somebody by asking around their health and well-being, because it's really important, and just knowing it's normal.
Yeah. And making them feel seen.
Absolutely. We all want to be seen.
And if you do have, postnatal anxiety and depression, what are some of the things that help? So I guess sometimes people don't want to reach out because they're a bit scared of what that might mean for them. Are there simple things that people can put into play?
Yeah. Put yourself first. So, again, go back to those things that made you feel functional, even if it feels like you're pulling on a roll, When you're a new mum and you're feeling really overwhelmed, knowing what to do for yourself can feel really foreign. So, the first thing I would say to people is have a shower. Even if, you're putting your bub on a blanket on the floor, find a safe space, make the time to have a shower, wash your hair. Make sure you're hydrating, whether you're breastfeeding or not, you need to be taking in fluid, you need to be fueling your body and your mind. So make sure, regardless of what you can afford in terms of nutrients, that you're looking after yourself and getting food on board, because you need that for your energy levels. If there are things that make you feel whole, like music, art, sitting in the sunshine, going for a walk around the block, try to reconnect with those things, even if it's just three steps sort of down the path towards the street. If you're not up to walking fully, just the process of actually doing something and moving, we know releases all of those wonderful, brain chemicals that we need, and can just flip the switch and make you feel a little bit more functional. And baby steps, we just need to go as slow as we're expecting our bubs to go in their development, and go easy on ourselves. A really good thing to do that I always tell people before you have your bub is write down the things that seem really easy, but write down the things that make you, that you need to do. So whether it's listening to music, going for a walk, getting to the gym, walking the dog, whatever it is, eating something in particular, and chuck it in a tissue box or a little box. And then when you're not feeling great, pull it out. Even if it's just a connection and you don't feel up to doing it, you're connecting with a part of yourself. You're reminding yourself that there's something to do that could make you feel better. And you kind of need that in those dark moments.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice. And Julie, if someone has struggled with, say, their first baby, what's the likelihood that for subsequent babies that they may encounter similar struggles, or do you find it doesn't work like that?
Look, there is research to show that if you've had an experience of perinatal mental health, that you could well have the same or similar experience with other bubs. But what you also find that quite often the thoughts and the concerns about that can be more overwhelming than the experience itself, because people have been through it. They know what to put in place. They kind of know where that, metaphorical edge is that they feel like they're going to fall over. And we get stronger every time, even though we don't always feel it. So, for some people, they do experience it, and with every child, and that's really overwhelming. But they know with each, bub that they will come out of it at the end. And for those that don't, for those that live with a lifelong experience of mental illness, mental health conditions, they can be amazing parents. It doesn't change the fact that they have these amazing connections, and that their bubs learn that their parents are people who feel the world and experience the world differently. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So my last question, Julie, would be, is there anything that you wish parents knew about postnatal anxiety and depression that's not talked about, or that as you as a practitioner?
I think going back to what I just said, and that is you can be an amazing parent with all of these things that we think make us faulty. I think that parents give the richest lives to their bubs when they show recovery, when they show working through and putting themselves first. And, you don't have to be a particular way to be a good parent. You have to be in touch with yourself, and you have to be, connected with your bub. And you can do that with mental health conditions. Even if, you need to go to a mother-baby unit or you need to separate yourself to make yourself well. The richness that comes from that reconnection and laying down the bedrock of that relationship again, you know, can go on to create an even stronger relationship. So I think, you know, sometimes the kind of perfect parenting and looking like everything's okay doesn't give that depth of relationship with yourself or your bub. So I think, you know, rather than seeing our mental health as, you know, a deficit, see it as a strength. Knowing that you've been vulnerable makes you stronger down the track, and, you know, own that for you and for your bub and your family.
Oh, I love that so much because, you know, imagine telling your child they have to be perfect, right? We think that's the most stupidest thing. And so if they see you as being perfect all the time, how does that allow them to be human? Because they think, oh my God, I'm failing. I'm not perfect all the time.
No.
You know, it's actually, I think, our weaknesses or things that we're not, that connect us with other people, and the fact that you can go through those highs and lows and they can do that too.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a 13-year-old and, you know, I have 4 words I say we should never use: normal, perfect, should and must.
Yeah.
Well, just, you know, they're the things that build these kind of cages around us that, you know, I should be this, I must be that. There's normal, there's perfect. None of that exists in a real world, you know, and they just set unrealistic expectations. And we know during this part of our lives, you know, those expectations are hard enough to reach without them being unrealistic.
Oh, Julie, thank you so much for being with us today. That's been such a helpful and insightful conversation. Love what you do, what PANDA does. So, yeah, no, it's amazing.
A huge thanks to Mistella for sponsoring this episode. Mistella empowers parents throughout their parenting journey with education and honest conversations from pregnancy and beyond. Mistella has plenty of parenting articles and resources on their website. Visit mistella.com.au. Mistella is our family's favourite.
And make sure everyone do check out the PANDA website, check out the health check and give them a call if you're not feeling yourself. You know, there's no shame in saying that. In fact, it's maybe the bravest and best thing that you ever possibly do. Thanks for tuning in to the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast, and never forget, parents, you've got this.
Join a Parents You've Got This masterclass today to be prepared, excited and educated for pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. Visit www.parentsyou'vegottthis.com.au and sign up for a masterclass today.
The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and is intended to support, not replace, a discussion with your doctor or healthcare professional. Parents You've Got This take no responsibility for any medical decisions made by individuals based on the information provided in this podcast.